Today, we're going to look at where you are on the retirement scale. Now, typically, this is looked at with numbers. We're doing a little bit more behaviorally today in a different way, but we're going to help you figure out where you are on the retirement scale, how you measure up to your peers, and a little bit of what you can do to kind of get to the next level and some of the problems there. So let's jump right in.
Okay, let's do it.
The reason I wanted to give 4 things instead of like 5 or 10. And I'm learning this. This is a great sort of behavioral tool because, okay, we can figure out where you are and what your number is, but what does it mean and why does it matter? It's really these are the questions behind the questions.
And I would think most people, if you ask them, they're like, I'm about average.
Yep.
I'm about in the middle.
Yep.
Well, we give you 4, so you can't be in the middle.
You can't be in the middle.
It's got to be either under average or over average. You can't be comfortable.
Nope. And that's really the goal is if you're going to be thoughtful about this and be thoughtful about your retirement. And really what we're talking about is ultimately, this is what we talk about a ton in a lot of different videos is how do we make wealth meaningful? Because you can either spend what you have well or poorly. And if you spend it poorly, that only really affects you. And so if it matters, and I think it does matter, how do we spend well in a way that's consistent with your values? And so if we're not honest about where we are, it's really hard to be able to do that.
Yeah. Jump into number 1, and that is basically you are dependent. And sadly, there's a lot of people this way. They get their social security. Typically, they stop working a lot of times not voluntarily. Health issues, job shut down, something's going on, and they have not saved very well. And they are now dependent on social security or possibly a pension from the company, but almost always it's just social security. And that is a very baseline level of money.
It's a tough thing, and we can't spend a ton of time on this one just because we've got a lot of other stuff that we've got to get to. But really, if that's where you're at or where you're trending to be, we want to typically delay Social Security as long as we can to get the highest benefit. And really, it's how do we cut spending? And how do we find ways to be efficient with things? And there's a ton of great content out there about that. I don't know that we want to really try to reinvent the wheel there, but that's not where we really want to be or where we want anyone to be. And so we want to aspire to be beyond that.
Okay. And so the next level is stability and security. Okay. You're stable, you're secure, you're not paycheck to paycheck, but you don't have a whole lot left over. You're making it.
Yep. And we tend to find quite a few folks are in this phase or think they're in this phase or live like they're in this phase. Where I see this, I think, is folks who are just retired and they tend to not be spending as much as they were in their last working years. That can be a really good thing because they're taking the concerns about running out of money and overspending early on very seriously. And I think that can be positive. There are other times where people live as if they're in stability and security when they're really in independence or in abundance.
Yeah.
And that's a key thing. And so this is where, to me, we want to blend in the behavioral side with the actual numbers. And we want to figure out, okay, if you're living like you're in the stability and security phase, do you have to?
Right.
And are you actually? And this is where getting to know your numbers and what you actually spend really come into play.
Well, and getting a third set of eyes, particularly if you're a couple, getting someone like us to sit down and really look at the numbers. And this is what we do for a living, is to say, okay, things cost more now, but you've got some money, and really run some numbers and show people you can actually spend some money.
Let's make a game plan to do it intentionally.
Interest rates are up a little bit, and so this is going to grow some, and enjoy your money. That seems to be a resounding theme on our show, is enjoy your money. You've worked hard, you've saved, and now that you're not working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, enjoy your money.
Someone's going to enjoy it. Whether it's the government, whether it's your family, or whether it's you. I didn't tell you I was going to say that, but it's true. So that's stability and security. And so, if you've got to find a point on the map and you're not sure exactly where you are, you don't feel like you're fully independent, you might be in the stability and security phase. And there's some things that we can do to figure that out and level up. It's really taking an inventory of where you are and what you actually spend, figuring out your numbers, and making a game plan to maximize that wealth as much as possible. And so the next phase, independence. This is where everyone really, I think, aspires to be. Most people aspire to be here. And I think this is a good goal. You're not making decisions based on money.
Right. You have plenty. You don't have to worry about spending money each month. You're the money's there and you're okay and you don't have to worry about it. And that's a very comfortable place to be. It's just you see something at the store and it's like, I can buy that and it isn't going to devastate me. Or you've heard someone else went on a trip here and it was really fun. It's like, hey, let's go there. You just pick up and go. It's a nice, very nice place to be.
This is where I think most people are and don't realize it, that are some of the folks that we work with.
True.
And you would think hearing, and I totally agree with you, it's a great place to be. There are traps in the independence stage.
So what are those?
Which is kind of interesting. And there's really a couple. One is potentially taxes that is sometimes overlooked. You know, the more capital you have, the more likely you are to have some tax traps there. And we've talked about those in some other videos, so we won't belabor those. But making sure that you don't get killed in taxes in the independence stage can be a really big deal. Can be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. That's a big opportunity. The other one is a little bit more qualitative and a little bit more behavioral, is in this phase, you might not spend it all and you might not enjoy it all, because the folks that tend to really live in this phase don't actually realize that they're there. They think they're in stability and security, but they're actually in independence. They've got plenty of money. And the reason that they have plenty of money is because they've saved and invested well. And behaviorally, they don't overspend.
Right.
But the risk is not spending enough and enjoying it, and someone else spends it, whether that's the government, family, or a charitable organization.
Right.
This tends to be folks that are in the $1.5 to $5 roughly $1 million total net worth range. And they tend to spend between $100 and $150, $200,000 a year. At one point, it seems like a lot. It feels like nowadays it doesn't spend nearly that well.
True.
And so, there's a lot of like inflation, lifestyle creep can really have a big impact in this phase. And the final phase is abundance. Now, this is really where everyone wants to be. Most people do. And we tend to see folks that are in this phase and yet don't realize they are and don't live like they are. And what we try to do is help folks get to this phase and make it really meaningful along the way.
Yeah, this is where your net worth significantly exceeds what you're going to spend the rest of your life. You like to say you've earned your terminal dollar. You've earned the last dollar that you'll ever spend, and now you have a lot above that. And this is where you start getting into, people seem to be charitably minded or generationally minded. This is where you can really make a difference for some charities or for the next generation or 2 or 3 generations.
And sometimes this is the trap in this phase is, I think in my experience of the folks that I've worked with who are in this, people know it, but they don't want to admit it.
Yeah.
And
the government loves these people.
Yes, the government loves these people, especially the ones that don't want to admit it because they're afraid to do planning. They're like, oh, no, I'm not that wealthy. Like, I'm not Bezos. And yeah, we get that.
Yeah, you're not.
But you have $30 million and you spend 150 a year. Like, it's just, we have a handful of clients that are like this, you know, and it's like, okay, that's all well and good, but how do you make the most of it? How do you make sure that the money doesn't go to taxes, doesn't go to the government in other ways, and doesn't get squandered by the next generation or goes to causes that and things that you find meaningful? This is really a purpose-driven phase. The stakes are high because a mistake could be a $5-10 million mistake in terms of estate taxes. I was talking to someone last week, $8 million if they didn't do the planning that we recommended. And that's extremely high leverage, or you can make a huge impact in your family generationally or in your community and both, and this is a place where we really have to double down on the idea of money as a tool. How do we use it to build the world that you want to build, whether that's in your family, in your retirement, or in your community? And the tools and the strategies we use are different at this phase.
Oh yeah, it's very creative, and it's really based on what you want to do. What are your goals? What are your visions? And this is past you. Okay, with this much money, you can truly think past you being on this earth to say, what would I really like to do with this money?
And what we challenge you is you have to think that way. Someone else is thinking about how your money's going to get spent.
Yeah.
And it might as well be you.
And that kind of drifts over into my world more. That's where you need a really good estate planning attorney who understands charities, understands generational wealth to make sure that this thing can last legally as long as you want it to. There's a lot of states who allow for what is known as a dynasty trust. It's a trust that can go on forever. Actually, Arkansas, up until just very recently, did not allow for that. The trust had to terminate 21 years after the death of the youngest beneficiary. Well, now they've changed that to 360 years, I think. So
366. Yeah.
it's basically a dynasty trust that you can actually create this trust that will be in effect for generations, hundreds of years down the road, if you can. And that's really cool to have something that you create that generations who never met you will be benefiting from.
These are really deeply interesting challenges
Yeah.
to me
Yeah.
to solve. I'm setting one of these up for a client right now, and there's all kinds of different considerations that come into play that people wouldn't realize. Way beyond the basics of when you take Social Security, what assets do you own? The tax system is remarkably complex in that situation. I mean, the family that I'm doing this for in the moment right now that I'm thinking of, picking the right state that trust is set up in is going to be about a $200,000 a year delta. So not making a good decision is going to be like the baseline starting point.
Sure.
$200,000 a year in taxes.
Interesting.
Like the cost of getting that wrong is massive. So we talked about a ton in this video. We can't go into too much more depth. We're going to have a lot more videos coming out in the future about these. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any of the updates. And if you're in one of these stages, what we would tell you to do is just be honest about where you are in the stages, and let's have a conversation. We can make a game plan to help you get into the next stage or the stage that you want to be in, which hopefully is abundance, and how to do that, in the most efficient way possible. So you can go ahead and click the link below, book a time on our calendar. We'll have a chat with you and see if we can't create a game plan.
Yeah. All right. We will see you on the next one.